What is it? 11:59. Phone is off. Pen is in hand. And you're recording. Did Anne-Marie say she was going to attend?
I talked to her yesterday and she said that 11 was fine.
Okay. Probably pop in shortly then. Okay. Hi, Derek. Okay, it is 11:01, I believe, so we'll call the meeting to order, and perhaps Anne-Marie will show up in the next few minutes. Like to acknowledge that we're privileged to gather on the traditional territory of the Kwakwala speaking people. And yeah, we'll call the meeting to order. Are there any additions or amendments to the agenda as presented?
Nothing from me.
Okay, so seeing none, then can I have a motion to adopt the agenda as presented?
move.
Okay, all in favor? Opposed? Carried. Okay. Adoption, no, there are no minutes. Old business. We have a verbal report from our Public Works manager, Julian. Julian, are you with us? Yes, you are.
Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
You want me just to go ahead there, Mayor?
Yes, yeah, go ahead.
Just go for it. Okay, so at the last meeting, council requested a little bit more of a breakdown as to how I got to the the seemingly high number for the backup power for the fire hall. And basically I can go through that. We're all familiar with the rationale and the reasoning for this project, I think. We did go through it somewhat last meeting as to what we required to be powered and reasons why. For example, the air compressor 911 system, the doors are automatic, so they have problems manually opening those, delaying response time, et cetera, et cetera. Now, what I'm proposing is to power up the entire building. I've done several of these projects, and by the time you start, I know the question was asked, would it be cheaper if we just power up certain things like I just mentioned? At the end of the day, not really much of a difference in cost. For example, it is an emergency response building. We could put in manually operated switches instead of automatic transfer switches. The cost difference in this case is not very much because it's a single phase service, which makes a big difference as opposed to a 3-phase electrical service. So for that reason, I've priced it all out with automatic transfer switches. And in my opinion, that as it is an emergency building, the last thing you want is people arriving on the property and having to manually power up things. It should all be ready to go when they arrive. That's just my opinion there. So basically for that, to power the entire building, including the ambulance side as well, and they have a whole host of issues when they lose power for a long time, always getting more electronics. And
Sorry, I was on mute. Just hold on one moment. Pete, Anne-Marie is in the waiting room. I had to resend her the link. My apologies, Julian.
Okay.
I know she wanted to hear this part, so.
Oh, damn. Okay, no worries.
Go ahead.
Is she there?
Yes,
okay.
She is.
Okay. So yeah, just to recap, in a nutshell, Councillor Barron was just sort of saying that I think we all understand the rationale as to my request for powering up the fire hall and ambulance building. All of the, just very briefly, the 911 system, the air compressor, the doors, which are a problem to deal with manually, all of those sort of things, obviously the heat, lighting, etc. In this case, definitely recommending that we and I price this out to power up the entire building, not portions of it, like I just mentioned. And there are several reasons, and it being obviously an emergency response building, should be ready to go. So when everybody gets on site, it's all powered up, and they're not sort of fumbling around thinking, okay, this circuitry isn't live or whatever. That's just my take on it, and that's why I'm recommending the larger unit to power up the entire building. Cost difference isn't very much, actually, once you break it out. And then I also did mention just before you joined about the automatic transfer switches, seeing as it's a single phase service electrically and not a 3-phase service, the price difference isn't very much. It's minimal in the project scope. So to have the building automatically switch over, so the automatic transfer switch, what that is when the utility power is lost, then this piece of equipment automatically transfers, starts up the generator and then transfers the incoming power from it. So it's almost seamless. Anyhow, that said, so we're looking at about a 50 kilowatt generator. That's a 200 amp service. So it's, I think it's rated for 48 kilowatts, which is ample for the entire building. That unit alone runs in about $32,000. The quote that I have, a budgetary quote from a local electrical company for installation and supply of the other, like the automatic transfer switches, etc. So all the electrical supply and installation, that's another $19,000. This is based on, a lot of this pricing and everything is based on the proximity of the unit to the electrical system in the building. So some of you may be familiar that, okay, so where this location is on the side door on Catala, and its location is going to be right where those air bottles are for the ambulance building, where they're stored. So there's another approximately $6,000 in relocating that, and they're perfectly fine with it. They just need to have access, paved access to it, because they run the bottles back and forth with a trolley, that sort of thing, from the vehicle. So discussed all that, and I've priced that in at a modest $6K. And then, of course, more fun and games, we have asbestos in the walls of the fire hall building. So I'm just, there's a figure of about $8,000 in there for asbestos abatement. Now, I think some of you are familiar with working around asbestos and the precautions, etc. These, and I've done many of these jobs, including asbestos in the pulp mill, old pulp mill, lots of asbestos, and these jobs can get, the prices can go up very quickly for abatement. So anyway, I have had some, good discussion about it, and 8,000 is like a modest figure. So there could be definitely a little bit more cost there, depending on what we find. So right there, we're already at about $65,000. Throw in a little bit of a contingency, and that's how I got to the 70K. I've had that number there for a couple of years now in the Capital Works asks. It should be pretty close. And that's about it, unless there are any questions.
Thanks, Julian. Was there a cost breakdown, Pete, that I missed that got emailed to us?
No, there wasn't.
Oh, okay.
But I'm sure Julian could put that forward into a report and email it out to all of council.
Okay.
Sure.
Thanks. Council, questions for Public Works Manager? Go ahead, Councillor Downey.
When you say it kicks in, power kicks in automatically, and this might be really dumb, how long does the power go out for before it kicks in? Because we have so many brownouts and we have these 30-second glitches. So what does that look like?
Yeah, it's extremely quick. It depends on the system and the unit, but it's almost instantaneous.
Okay, and
So-
does it, when power comes back on, it shuts itself down, or is it shut down manually?
No, correct. So the lift stations, backup power at the public works yard that I've put in, those systems are all the same as this, and basically it takes care of itself. Like, it's all automatic. So it'll have generator cool down time before it shuts down. It senses the utility power is stable before it will actually switch.
Okay.
And steady for X amount of, you can program that in, like, 10 seconds, half a minute, 5 minutes. You can change that, but yeah, it's all done automatically.
Okay, and last question, asbestos, how much would be removed?
Okay, I don't have that information exactly, because there's a little bit of discrepancy, and I'm trying to get to the bottom of it as to, it's a hollow block building. The actual bricks are hollow,
Yeah.
and sometimes they would be filled with asbestos as an insulation, and sometimes it would just be in the mortar, and there's nothing in the hollow block wall. So that's going to have some bearing on the cost. If it's actually filled for insulation purposes, then that would be the more expensive, problematic option or case. If it's just in the actual mortar that's holding the bricks together, then that'd be a lot simpler. And I have, just for your information, why do we have to, is there an alternative to drilling through this block wall? Well, there is, but it's actually basically jackhammering out the floor sufficiently enough that you can get down to an elevation where you can core drill through the footings, and then come up outside, and pricing all that out, you're probably the same cost. Like, you're close to the same cost. That's an expensive option. So I think at the end of the day, as long as this asbestos abatement doesn't run away on us, then drilling through the wall is probably the best option.
Okay, anyone else for a question? Councillor Cole?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Wickstrom. So the auto transfer switch, they have a manual option, correct, Julia?
They do, yep.
Okay, and it'll be a diesel generator? And have
That's what I'm proposing.
It'll have a fuel tank outside, I guess.
It will, yeah.
And then the current fire hall and ambulance just use electric heat, and that would remain the same?
Yeah, so it is electric heat, and it would remain the same. Now, for example, the bays, like the truck bays, that's a big draw. In fact, that's the main draw. There are 3 space heaters in there. Two is 7.5 kilowatt, and then the other one's 10 kilowatt. So there's a 100 amp draw there if they were all on at the same time, which is highly unlikely. And then the ambulance side as well. So I mean, just to give you a breakdown where you're coming from, like power wise, max loading would be about 174 amps for the entire building, both sides, and it's a 200 amp service. So we need all of that size generator.
Okay, and just one more question. So you're, under this budget, you're proposing that, like, the town of Port McNeill would be the general contractor? You would hire out your services, or bring people in for certain things? Is that the idea?
Actually, yeah, I mean, it's to keep the cost down. I think I'll just go ahead and spec and order. Well, I won't have to spec because I'll work with the electrical company on that, but I'll order the generator as the town, and then that keeps costs down there. There's no markup and all the rest of it. and then just subcontract to K&K or whoever's going to install it.
And
the
so,
contractor.
and the idea here is we're going to apply for a grant for this. So is there any value in just putting the whole thing out in one tender and that's less work for you, or are we better off you being
Well,
really closely involved here?
well, yeah, I'd be really involved anyway,
Yeah.
even if we do put it out to tender. But yeah, it would offload a little bit of work for sure if we just tendered the whole thing as a $70,000, job. Which it's not that complicated. Like, I mean, an electrical company could quite easily do it. The lift stations, that's how it worked out there with the company that actually got those two backup power projects. That was tendered and they bid on it, and it was an electrical company that did the whole job, and they just subbed out the civil work.
Mhm.
Yeah. So maybe that
Okay.
is the best way.
Yeah, and I guess just finally, like, is this shovel ready, as they say? You've done most of the work, and
Yeah.
you can meet the grant deadline.
Yeah. It's all the specifications, everything's pretty much shelf ready. Yeah. Except for the asbestos bit, and that's I'm still working with a contractor and WorkSafe BC on that. And the lengthy thing is, and you've probably come across this yourself, like, you've got to come up with, there's a lot of preload. I mean, you've got to come up with SWPs, like safe work procedures, and all this other stuff before you can even do the work. So that's the only thing that's kind of lagging.
Okay, thanks. And I just want to say I like the plan to power up the whole building. The automatic transfer switch is pretty crucial if we got
You bet.
different people using it. So thanks.
Councillor
Okay.
Barron?
Welcome.
Was there any thought to, or I think we had talked before about replacing those heaters just with something a bit more energy efficient?
Yeah, correct.
That
And that
again?
came, no, absolutely bang on. That came from the Altus report that we had on the building assessments. And that is in their schedule. And I believe it was scheduled, don't quote me on this, but another year or two anyway. Because they're operational, they're functional, but they consume a lot of energy. So they're expensive to run. But yeah, we're looking at replacing those in the next year or two.
Could that be tacked into this if we're going for a grant application?
I don't see why not. Pete?
Thank you through the mayor. Yeah, absolutely. This is a grant application. We can include anything under the purview of the guidelines of the grant. And I do believe that emergency services is sort of the key focus for this grant. So it could well fall in there. And I don't know, Julian, if you've looked into it, but if we're looking at doing a new heating system, perhaps a heat pump would be the direction to go for that building.
Yeah. I would we'll have to do a little bit of digging on this one, because if you're changing the system, then it could change the power requirements, that sort of thing for the backup generator as well, right? So I can definitely look into it.
Okay, Councillor Mitchell?
I'd like to say I concur with CAO that, yeah, looking at a heat pump would be good. And I guess what I like about this is if we go with the 50 kilowatt, we don't have to worry about being short on power, because the heat pump is going to kick our reserves probably up by 25%. So we'll have some room for future growth in that facility if power requirements change, because the heat pump's going to save a huge chunk of that 100 kilowatts, whatever it is you're burning now. Not 100 kilowatts, 100
amps.
The heating was using 100 amp worth of power. It'd probably drop to 50 or 40 if you put heat pumps in.
Mm-hmm.
So that would give us some nice reserve. I like that.
I've got a question, Julian. So the generator, is the idea to get similar make and models to the other ones we have, so that if we have a breakdown, it's easier to get parts. We have continuity.
100%, and that is definitely something that I'm very cognizant of. It's going to be identical to the ones at the lift stations. It's a Kohler generator. Yeah, and it's actually going to be supplied from the same company too. Excuse me.
And just to clarify, you were saying that that compressor room would have to be moved?
No, not the compressor room. Sorry for the confusion. No, it's the bottles outside are for the
Right.
they're for the ambulance hall.
Yeah.
So that'll have to be located around the corner, sort of where the parking lot area is.
Yeah.
On the other side of the building, the fire hall, air compressor room, etc., will just stay the way it is.
Okay, so the other question is, I know we've heard a number of times that the compressor is on its last legs, and the compressor is something that we own, correct?
I believe so, yeah.
Okay, so I was in a meeting with Minister Osborne, and she had made mention of this particular grant and said how excited she was to have a grant that was available for fire halls to do upgrades. And I think that it's something that we should take note of, because she says this hasn't happened in many, many years.
Mhm.
I took it as a big hint that if you want a successful grant application, roll up things to upgrade the fire hall. So just want to throw that out there, that I think that would be a good direction to go. And why not put a new compressor in there as well? If they're struggling and it's at the end of life or hasn't been for long, certainly I would want to see a new compressor go in also into this grant application. Councillor Barron, did you want to say something?
Well, that has to do with purchasing the new SCBA's too, right? Because I believe Hyde Creek, the new ones that they bought, we can't power up, or is it Orcas? Somebody's gone with a new type of bottle anyways that you can't use this old compressor for. So are we going to get stuck where and the way it's been purchased in the past, our town did 50 or 30 bottles all at once. So all the bottles are going to expire at the same time. Well, then we're going to be in a spot where we're buying bottles that fit an old compressor that isn't working, and so on and so forth. I think we should shoot for the stars and hope we end up at the moon.
Anybody else have a question on Julian's report? Councillor Cole? Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm just sort of wondering about the process here. Are we doing a recommendation, or we already have the recommendation for the fire hall, I believe, for this grant? At this time, are we considering anything else for the resilient infrastructure stream, like grant ideas? If I have one.
Yeah, I don't think, oh, sorry, go ahead. Pete, Mr. Nelson Smith.
So the recommendation and resolution from council, I forget which meeting it was from, but we were going to take the fire hall generator out of the $888,000 we received. So if you're looking at applying this towards the grant funding that's available, then that could be part of the discussion, the next part of this committee of the whole meeting.
Okay, when would we discuss that? Like right after this item?
Yeah,
Or?
next. Mhm.
Okay.
Okay, Councillor Downey.
Just listening to the conversation around the room today, and it sounds to me like this may be an opportunity to revisit the fire hall completely, because we're talking about the heating structure that we currently have. We're talking about compressors. We're talking about the generator, the backup heat. I mean, this seems like an opportunity to focus solely on the fire hall, bring it up to a better standard in terms of our heating costs. So more of an environmental standard as well as a safety standard, and then just having it on reserve with regards to the generator. So I wonder if we need to broaden the scope of this project, is my question.
Yeah, and looking at, it definitely fits into our strategic priorities. you know, when we're answering the question, why this project? Well, it's been things that have been on the docket for quite some time. Why now that there's funding available? I guess it would be, would we have the capacity, Julian, to execute a large project such as this?
When is the deadline to have this application in?
January 27th.
Or January 27th?
Deadline
anything-
intake is January 27th. And I did find out from the meeting with Minister Osborne that they are committing for this and the other one that we had decided to apply for as well, a quick turnaround. So they're saying that it's not going to drag on like it did before. There's going to be a very quick turnaround on these.
Yeah, I mean, if council wishes, I mean, there are other things on the docket too for that building. I mean, you know, I did a refit of it 2 years ago there, on the outside and the windows and siding and all that stuff, but the roof did not get done. That's a, you know, fairly large ticket item. That's going to be more than the generator. So that's something else we could add in. That's pretty straightforward and easy to do. I'm sure I can bite that off. The only thing is with the heat pumps, that's going to take a little bit of doing, and the air compressor, I'm going to need some help on that one. But yeah, I mean, anything's possible. Just as long as we, yeah, I mean, as long as we don't, you know, if we don't get the grant, then I would just urge that we continue with the backup power portion, which I have it separated anyway. So it'd be nothing just to tender that immediately. But I would strongly recommend we keep that, if nothing else.
I guess, and we'll get into this discussion afterwards, but I guess the other thing for council is, do we, you know, go ahead with it anyway, given the fact that we're in a season where we could have more power outages, go with the backup power? Yeah, that's just a question, and use the funding that we got, the 800 from the 888,000. Who had their hand up? Sorry, Councillor Downey.
Julian, did you not say that the generator chosen the generator that you're looking at may be different, or you would have other considerations if we did have heat pumps?
Yeah, but Councillor Mitchell kind of spoke to that, and all it's going to do is give us, it's actually going to be favorable to go with a slightly oversized generator at this time, if indeed, you know, there's more expansion within the building and more demand, more electrical demand down the road. Because the heat pumps is just addressing these old inefficient space heaters, the 3 of them in the truck bay, and that's it. So, well, that's the bulk of it anyway, of the power consumption.
So they can be done independent of each other, is what you're saying?
Could be, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, so the way that I read our agenda, we will go into, sorry, were there any final questions before I just move to B? So, because these things are very closely tied together. So if not, then we go into the grant opportunity for the COVID-19 resilience infrastructure stream. And what would you like to look at for this, council? Are we feeling that this past report that was just brought verbally to us, maybe something in the direction that we can go in? What would you like to see? Councillor Cole?
Yeah, I would like to discuss B, and then we'll see
Okay.
how it fits in. Yeah.
Okay, so go ahead. So the recommendation is current strategy priority be considered, that council identify strategic priorities regarding the infrastructure, the Investing in Canada Infrastructure Fund. So I guess it's wide open. If there are any other considerations that council wants to put forward that would fall into the strategic priorities, go ahead, Councillor Cole.
Thank you, Mayor Wickstrom. Yeah, like on page 5 of the grant, it's got 4 bullets of the different stream outcomes. So active transportation infrastructure, including parks, trails, footbridges, bike lanes, and multi-use paths, is on there.
when I look at the rest of the list, I really, with the exception of the fire hall generator, I really don't see us having any shovel-ready projects. So my thought for the active transportation is obviously we have a plan in the works, and I've spoken with Kevin, and he likes this idea, but he hasn't committed to it, obviously, without council consideration and approval. But the idea would be to fast track the shovel-ready plans for a multi-use path similar to the Rotary Trail from Mine Road to Pioneer Hill and McNeil intersection. You know, as you guys know, we own the whole right of way down that side of the road. We have given a budget to Julian to deal with drainage in there and in anticipation of a trail. I know we haven't officially given that direction, but the case is good from a public works standpoint. They can't get vehicles in there anyways. They're spending a whole bunch of time weed whipping instead of lawn mowing. So it would save time there and public works resources. A job like this is well suited to local contractors to do. So I could see local contractors benefiting from a job like this, as opposed to say our harbor or something like that is a little more specialized. So I could see it resulting in jobs, local jobs. Like I said, we did budget 25,000-ish for the drainage, which I believe Julian could speak to maybe, but that's just a little bit behind, but he still plans to do that so we could roll the drainage part of the plan into this application. So presumably we would have a savings on that budget money, which we haven't spent yet. It will fix the fugitive water issue we have along there, so it's kind of kill two birds with one stone. And yeah, I think if, and obviously McElhaney is kind of stepping back from the OCT a bit, so they could focus on the active transportation plan with a mandate from council. So I think that's all I wanted to speak to, except you know, the existing Rotary Trail is well used. I think we all see that. And it is well used because it's separated from vehicle traffic. I think that's very important. So the active transportation plan will identify other things I hope we do in the future. Are we ready for, you know, a bike route, painting lines, and, you know, this is a real shovel-ready project. I think we can give direction to and get the application in for January 27th. We've got two council meetings in January before that. So that is the end of my spiel.
Okay, thank you.
Any questions or concerns?
Thank you. Just wanted to say that you're a little bit muddy. So I don't know if something's over top of your mic, but it might just be your mic. Anybody else? Councillor Barron?
Sorry, did Derek, do you mean Campbell Way?
Yes, I do.
Oh, that's better.
I heard Mine Road, so I was trying to,
Well, it would start at Mine Road, right?
yep,
Where the Rotary Trail ends, and it would continue down the green belt. And, you know, we could even do phase 1 to the other road, but, you know, we own that green belt right down to Pioneer Hill Drive. And I mentioned there's two ends of Pioneer Hill Drive, so I'm suggesting Neil intersection. And again, you know, it's something we've talked about and identified as an issue with water, and that we could kill two birds with one stone there. And preliminary reports from McElhaney, you know, have indicated that there's public support for that project. So
Okay. Any other questions or suggestions for the funding? Councillor Mitchell, you're muted, sir.
I was muted. My apologies. Mayor Wickstrom, is there room, and this, I read through this and I wasn't sure if you could push it into a recreation type project. Is there room to do that, or is it pretty much for more functional infrastructure than recreation?
I think it's for capital projects. Maybe Pete, you were at that meeting. I missed the meeting. Did you get to the one about where they described what the funds could be used for on Tuesday morning?
I don't recall anything specific like that. However, just looking at the program, it does allow for retrofits, repairs, and upgrades for local government buildings, health infrastructure, and educational infrastructure.
Yeah, I guess I would. What I would like to see considered, if it's there, is a fishing float that I think we could really would really improve our marina and our waterfront access for families. If that's something we could.
The
drop
one
in
thing,
there.
oh, sorry, my apologies, sorry.
No, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say the one thing that was very communicated to us was that it needs to be shovel ready. So we have to have most of the pieces together that we can act on it very quickly.
Right.
That would be the dilemma with, not that I'm against the idea, I think that would be the dilemma with the fishing float, because we really don't have any drawings or plans or anything that would make it ready to go. Councillor Cool?
Yeah, I just want to reiterate that it says active transportation infrastructure, including parks, trails, footbridges, bike lanes, and multi-use paths. Pete mentioned the first bullet. It also says COVID response infrastructure, including measures to support physical distancing. I don't think we really have anything we could jump on there. It also says disaster mitigation and adaptation, including natural infrastructure, flood, fire mitigation, tree planting, and related infrastructure. And, you know, the slide comes to mind on that, but we're using the other grant for the slide. And we do not have any sort of plans other than the fire hall for our buildings or health infrastructure or education infrastructure. So by having this plan in place, an active transportation plan, we can simply approve that portion of the plan, because you need a plan typically to get an active transportation grant. Port Hardy recently did that. They do not have an active transportation plan, but they did a plan on one component of it for a path going to the old mall up on the hill. So they've sort of set the precedent for that. So, you know, at this point, it would be great if we could have a recommendation for McElhaney to just report on it. If they can't do it, then it's sort of dead in the water. But I think if we're encouraging them, or we think it's a good idea as a council, you know, I think they would pull off the job and have it shovel ready.
Which job are you referring to?
I'm referring to the multi-use path from Mine Road to Pioneer Hill and McNeil Drive. So basically that grassy green belt.
Yeah.
That-
So keeping in mind, the active transportation plan would have to be complete first.
Right.
And it would have to be completed before the 27th, right?
That's not my intention. As I just mentioned, Port Hardy does not have an active transportation plan, but they got an active transportation grant by approving a portion of the plan.
Okay.
So in my opinion, we've paid for a plan, the plan's underway. We would have one portion of it fast tracked, and council would approve that this multi-use trail be part of the eventual plan.
Okay.
And Mayor Wickstrom, I guess on that same vein, we have a project already approved for the marina. The pile driver is going to be here. It would be probably not a huge matter for the engineering to be done to put another piling in to hang that float off of. And this is the time to do it. And if we can do it for active transportation, I think we could do it for the marina.
Okay.
So
So
I just have that in there.
So I hear three ideas that council has, or members of council have put forward. So we've got one for continuing the trail along Broughton from Mine to Pioneer Hill. We have a fishing dock for the marina. And I've heard also to do the retrofits to the fire hall. So keeping in mind that it's on the 27th and whatever 27th of January is the deadline, and whatever project we decide to do, there'll be some pieces that need to be worked on prior to. How is council feeling? Is anybody willing to put a motion forward at this time? Councillor Cole?
I'll have to wing this a bit, but recommendation that we give direction to McElhaney on the feasibility of meeting the January 27th deadline for the Investing in Canada Infrastructure Program regarding multi-use trail down Campbell Way.
Okay, do I have a seconder for that motion? Okay, discussion?
I'd like to make an amendment to that motion to also include
Just
the
a second.
feasibility of a fishing float engineering for the same deadline.
Pete?
Heather, could we please get the motion up on the screen?
Thank you. Give her a second. Yes, Councillor Cole?
Yeah, I would entertain like two separate motions for that. We're kind of mixing
Okay.
apples and oranges, but
Okay. So we'll do the first one, and then Councillor Mitchell will write out your motion then, okay?
Well, actually, I made an amendment. I made a motion to make an amendment. The
Okay.
procedure is to call for a seconder. If there isn't one, it fails.
Trying my best, there's lots of times we don't get the full, Robert's rules, the intent. I mean, if we're going to go down that motion, then everybody should, or down that line, then everybody should be speaking only twice, and then we call the question each time. So trying my best to have a little bit of flexibility with the, especially in a committee of the whole, Councillor Mitchell. Councillor Barron?
Was Councillor Mitchell's intention that McElhaney do up the drawing end of it? Is that why you were trying to put it into one motion? Because Derek's asking them for the feasibility of getting the trail done in time for the grant. Is that why you were trying to, instead of having two separate motions, because they need to do the engineering part so that we can get the pile driver done?
Correct.
Then I second it.
Okay. All those in favor of the motion as amended? Oh, well, let's get it typed out first. Sorry. So, Derek, can you guide us along on your original motion that we give direction to McElhaney?
Sure. I like Anne Marie's word feasibility. So a motion that we give direction to on the feasibility of meeting the January 27th deadline. I don't think we need to mention the grant because it's above it, right? For multi-use trail, Mine Road to Pioneer Hill Drive.
And I'll just let her finish that.
Yeah.
And
Can we just add a maybe grant deadline of the meeting, the January 27th grant deadline? So, yeah, right there.
Question.
yeah, I would just want to get Councillor Mitchell's. Can you just hold on a second? Because see, there was seconded, so we have to add his portion. Okay, so direct McElhaney to do what was that again, Councillor Mitchell?
The feasibility of putting in a fish float. A fishing float.
Don't worry about the spelling. We're not watching. We just get the intent out is fine. Heather, it's hard when somebody's watching you write something out. The feasibility, sorry, are you talking about of adding a fishing float to the current work that's already being performed?
We're just utilizing the equipment that's going to be here. I guess I don't know if you can add it to that project, but
Okay,
just getting that done while they're here.
so the feasibility of an addition of a fishing float. Is that good?
Whatever engineering is required, I don't know much about that.
Okay, so that's been first and seconded. Councillor Downey has a question, and then Pete, just one moment, okay? I thank you.
I'm going to just hold pass right now. I'm rereading the motion.
Okay, Pete?
So I just would like some clarity from Councillor Mitchell and Councillor Cole of exactly what information they're looking for from McElhaney with this motion. Just simply what I'm looking at is, are they actually going to be drawing up plans, or am I asking the question, could you have engineered plans drafted and a price drafted by January 27th? I'm just sort of looking for some clarity on the motion. For the end result being, there may be additional costs to using McElhaney, and I'd like council to identify where those costs would come from.
Councillor Cole?
Yes, I didn't want to be presumptuous and tell them to do it, but we could take that tack. I don't see this costing any more money. They're already doing the active transportation plan. So can they meet the deadline within budget is the intention of my motion. And I'm really hesitant on, I'll be voting this down because of the fishing float being in the same motion. We risk, there's already tender issued for the harbor. So typically once a project's underway, grants are successful that way if you already have things underway. I realize we'd just be adding, there's really been no public consultation about a fishing float, or as far as I know, nothing, the Harbor Advisory Committee hasn't looked at it. So I really feel trying to make that deadline would be difficult without the public process. The difference being for the trail idea is there has been public process through the interactive map. And, there's been, as far as I know, there's been sort of, well, I don't know if that's been suggested on the map and there's a whole bunch of support for it or not, but that's my 2 bits on that one.
So any other questions on the motion that's currently before us? Seeing none, I will call the question. All those in favor of the motion as written? And those opposed? Okay, it's defeated.
That was the amendment that was defeated. The
Oh.
original motion would stand.
Sorry. Thank you.
No problem. We can vote on Derek's motion now.
Okay. So then we're voting on the motion that we give direction to McElhaney on a feasibility study of meeting the January, should actually say in time of meeting the January 27th grant deadline, but I'm not gonna suggest any written changes for a multi-use trail from Mine Road to Pioneer Hill. So if there isn't no further discussion, all those in favor?
I have a question.
Oh, sorry, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry. I would just want to apologize. You're now shrunk very small, so I'm having a hard time seeing everybody.
And that's why I spoke up. Thank
Okay.
you. So the motion as it reads says that we give direction to McElhaney on the feasibility of meeting the January 27th deadline. Are we not asking them if they are capable of meeting the deadline? I just find the motion to be wordy without necessarily giving direction as to what the intent is. And I believe our intent is to determine, will they have the active transport plan substantially complete in time for us to make a submission on the January 27th grant deadline? So.
Go ahead, Councillor Cole.
Yeah, that is the intention of the motion. So I'm open to rewording that a bit. that. Sorry, I'm just,
Can we defeat it and start over?
sure.
All right, all those in
Yeah,
favor?
yeah, no.
All those in favor of the motion? Opposed? Okay, it's defeated.
And just for clarity, on the first motion of Councillor Mitchell's amendment, can we just get a recount of who was in favor and who was opposed? I didn't get it all written down in time.
I was opposed.
Opposed?
Opposed.
And
Councillor Mayor Whitstrom, Councillor Cole,
Councillor Barron, yeah.
And
Oh, sorry,
Downey.
Councillor Downey. I didn't see if Councillor Barron voted or not. Anyways, it doesn't matter.
thank you.
Okay. So Councillor Downey, did you
Okay.
want to reword that motion?
I'm going to take a stab at it if I may, that we direct staff to ask McElhaney as to the feasibility of having the active transportation plan I see. Substantially complete to meet the January 27th grant deadline.
You can even put COVID grant deadlines so that we know what we're talking about.
The resilient infrastructure.
I was wondering, should we mention the actual multi-use portion of the trail, or is it the whole plan we're after?
Well, the reason I crafted it to say substantially complete is because, well, to your point, I guess, is we want to make sure we want to make sure the portion that you're
Yeah.
inquiring about is focused on first, right? So
So at the end, say for a multi-use trail or something,
yeah,
but it's your motion, so.
just rereading it. As to the feasibility of the active. After it says active transportation plan, feasibility of the active plan, multi-use path from Mine Road to McNeil Road. And then take out substantially. Of having the multi-use, take the ATP, put that to the end. So it would read this way: direct staff to ask McElhaney as to the feasibility of having the multi-use path from Mine Road to McNeil Road portion of the active transport plan complete to meet. I think that addresses what we're after, does it?
Mhm. Okay, seconder to that motion.
Me.
Okay, discussion. I want to just chime in that be for council to consider that if the fire hall retrofit is top of mind, that this will take some time to find the answer for. And one of the things that we're always saying is that we get these grant deadline and then ourselves and staff is scrambling at the last minute to submit it. So the grant deadline is January 27th. And we did mention to Julian, you know, can you find out this? Can you find out that? So by making this motion, I'm putting this to council, are you asking Julian to pause the investigation of those things that we had asked, or are you asking for them to be done simultaneously? Councillor Barron, sorry, and then Councillor Cole?
Oh,
Nope.
sorry.
That's okay.
Sorry, the way I was looking at this is literally Pete or someone going to McElhaney and asking them, and then it's in their court. And no, Julian needs to keep going and get the retrofit done.
You mean the quote's done, not the job itself. Okay, Councillor Cole?
Yes, I believe the direction to Public Works was to quote this fire hall for the 800,000. That's a whole different pot of money it was coming out of. Am I?
No, you were the one that brought it up for the grant, Derek. We had said the generator for the 800,000, but then then we were looking at it from a whole project instead of just the one, and we were looking at the heat, the whole building. The whole building project, my understanding was we were going to apply for the COVID-19, which would be the motion that comes after this one, with the idea that if that wasn't successful, the generator package part of the quote, which he's already got separated out, would then go to the $800,000.
Okay, and I believe, can we apply for both? Or I think maybe I read somewhere that we can only apply for one. My only other thing I would say is this multi-use path is, you know, hundreds of thousands of dollars, I'm going to say. So here's our opportunity to get hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of grant money versus 70, which we could easily pull out. I mean, we could, you know, build the trail out of general funds too. But I think this is a really good visible project that can be shovel ready. We really only have two that I see that are shovel ready. One's worth 70,000 and the other's is worth hundreds of thousands. So
The 70,000 didn't include all the retrofit with the heaters and the compressor, all of that other stuff. The 70,000 was just for the generator part of it.
I know, but we've all of a sudden upped the scale. It's just gone from a generator to let's put a roof on and totally redo the whole thing. So that portion is not shovel ready and would be a lot of work to put together. Whereas the trail plan is basically McElhaney's baby. They'll be doing the work on it. I don't see a whole lot of staff time or, you know.
Yeah, but actually there is staff time regardless, because our staff is the one who's going to be putting together the application. Yeah. Anyone else want to? Councillor Downey?
Referring to the motion, my understanding is the motion is really asking McElhaney, is it doable or not? If they come back and say, no, we cannot have that information ready for you, then there's no further discussion to have. If they are ready and able to have that portion, then we submit the application. And do we have to do it, or could we ask somebody else to prepare it on our behalf?
Well, we would have to vote first whether that was the direction that council wanted to go with the application. So the first step is just finding out whether they could do it. I only post the question out because I wanted to know whether I had thought consensus was formed around having the fire hall retrofitted. So that's why I asked the question. All right, any further questions on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion? Opposed? Never mind. I'm always getting in trouble for doing qualifiers. So, okay, it's
count though. I can't see.
Okay.
Mitchell's.
So there was Councillor Mitchell, Cole, and Downey were for. I did not see Councillor Barron. Were you for or opposed?
I have no issue with just asking McElhaney if they can get the stuff that they're already doing. They can switch it around a little bit and get us the information. What I'm opposed to is this taking priority over the retrofit.
Yeah, that's the same. But anyways, so there you go. So the motion passes. So we're directing staff to find out from McElhaney. I guess the first question, Pete, is just whether it's even possible for them to finish that portion of the active transportation plan in time to apply for the grant deadline. Okay.
Correct. And was Councillor Barron opposed
Yes.
as well?
No. Oh,
Yes, she was. Were you opposed? Sorry, you're muted. We can't hear you. I thought she was opposed, but
You're on mute.
either she's having.
Yes, I don't know. I'm not opposed to asking McElhaney if they can do it. I'm opposed to overriding the other program with this program.
Okay.
Did you vote opposed, though? We need to record it in the minutes.
I guess, yeah, you were for then.
Sure.
There you go. Okay. Anything else before we move along? Yeah, go ahead, Councillor Downey.
I need clarity at this point. Where are we at with the fire hall? Because we talked about making that a larger project.
Yeah, and I think we talked about it being a larger project in order to apply for the that grant funding. Otherwise, we'll just go through the budget process and knock off things one at a time.
Which grant funding are we referring to?
The one we were just speaking to, the COVID-19 resilience infrastructure stream.
Can we put in 2 grant applications?
No, we're only allowed one.
Only allowed one. Okay.
Okay, so I guess I'm going to ask, so we're going to have another meeting in January regarding what we're going to apply for after we hear from, okay. Moving on then to item 5C, Canada Summer Jobs Program. Just going to flip over to that. And so you got information about the money that we first didn't receive, then did receive, and then dates changed. So we are at, I'm just going to refer to our Deputy CFO, Laura Evans, if you wanted to add anything to the report, or did you have a question right off the bat, Shelley? No, okay, sorry, you were unmuted, so go ahead, Laura.
I don't think there's much to add. I'm available to answer any questions though.
Okay, I have a question for you. I'll start off. Looking at the short time frame, January 4th to February 26th, given that there's Christmas, then there's a hiring process. Perhaps it's as easy as hiring people back again. I don't know if any preliminary conversations were had with students to see if they would be able to come back. How likely do you feel that we could meet this February 26th? I know I talked to Rachel Blaney's office and they were going to get back to us because we are not the only municipality struggling with this tight timeline. So from a staff perspective, how do you feel about it?
I feel like I'm not quite sure. It's a tight timeline. As long as there's people under 30 that want to work for 2 months, then could be doable.
So, and we also, just to clarify, Pete, we need to advertise, we need to interview, and then we need to be able to make sure that students can be supervised. Go ahead, Pete.
Thank you, Mayor Wickstrom. So the steps staff have taken to date before this committee of the whole meeting is Shelley McEachran, our receptionist, has put out a request from all of the people that we hired in 2020 to see if they're interested in coming back. We haven't offered them a position. We're just simply reaching out to see who is available and at what capacity. The way that this grant funding is looking, it would be full-time positions. So I think that's automatically going to scrub out anybody that's currently enrolled in school. We felt it was best to reach out to the most recent employees first to give them an opportunity.
Okay, Councillor Downey, and then Councillor Mitchell.
What was the response?
We're still currently waiting for all the responses to come back. This was, I think, Monday we sent out the call. I do believe that Laura only received confirmation on the grant funding on the availability of alternate uses on Monday.
So no early indications then.
No, not at this time.
Okay, Councillor Mitchell.
I'm wondering what the additional costs, has anybody calculated what the roughly additional cost would be? It's going to cost us not much, like $6 an hour for these employees if we hire them, $6.36, plus whatever other costs we have to add in.
It's on page 48 of the report. At the bottom, cost of the town is $13,755.
I know that's right. That's what we have to kick in. But what's it going to cost for the staff,
Oh.
for the renting vehicles or providing vehicles, rain gear, personal protective equipment, all those things? Is there some cost for that? Yeah, our cost is $6.31 an hour based on that 13.7, which is great. That's a pretty good value for the labor. But what else do we have to do, and do we really have that time to do it?
I'll defer to our CAO, or
What's the cost? Yeah.
And I will defer to our public works manager because I don't have a faintest inkling of what those costs will look like.
okay, Julian.
Yeah, thank you, Pete. And obviously, Laura and myself and Pete were working on this together. There are many moving parts, of course. As far as the public works goes, we did put into the report that vehicles, for example, to support social distancing of staff, the conditions with our safe work, our COVID safe work plan, require more vehicles. Reluctantly, I've just retired one of our pickups because it's unsafe to be on the road, which just complicates things if I'm going to have 4 more staff members. There is a cost, I mean, with the rain gear that we'll have to supply, the extra PPE. Councillor Mitchell is absolutely right. You're $250 per person right there, maybe $1,000 just in rain gear. Traditionally, all they've been required to supply is their safety footwear. Other than that, the town supplies everything else, and that's hard hats, gloves, all of the usual stuff. So, I mean, there is quite a bit of money there. Not only that, the worrisome part, and we put it in there, was the PPE required, the extra PPE required for COVID. I've slowly been securing enough PPE for a crew of 5, and now, or 6, including myself. And now it's going to be a crew of 9. It's a bit of a concern because I know it's tough to get. And then, of course, the supervision, there is a cost involved, but it's a very difficult one because it's not really quantitative. So whether it's 2 hours of my time or my charge hand, or even any one of the crew's time in supervising these people, it's going to take away from the regular duties, I guess, of public works at this time.
Is there work that's ready to go? Like, sorry to interrupt, but I mean, in the summertime when we have the public works summer students come in, there's the weed whacking, like there's traditional jobs there. Is there stuff right now? The way that I'm reading this is for the next 6-8 weeks.
It is, yeah, it is.
Is there work that's ready there, or is this really turning into more of a make work project?
Point taken, and that was something that was discussed at the beginning of this when we first were aware. I think we've got meaningful work for them to do. It's definitely not the traditional time to be having summer students, so it's a bit more difficult to find work for them. But the work that they would do, I'm pretty sure, is in my mind, meaningful work that we probably wouldn't get to. One thing that does spring to mind is we've tried as a town to commit to being more bear aware. There's an awful lot of berry bushes that could come out, which we just don't have time to do with the regular crew.
Okay, sorry to interrupt you, Julian. Yeah, we don't, I'm sure you'll find meaningful work. Councillor Downey was looking or to ask a question.
Just a simple question. Is there any value to keeping these funds? I'm hearing that keeping these funds could be more work than benefit. So
Yeah, and that's exactly what I'm thinking here as well. And further to that, I think that we should be lobbying the government and perhaps sending it out to other municipalities. If other municipalities are struggling with this, other municipalities should get on board and write a letter, because this funding would be absolutely crucial for us in the summer. It's funding like we've never had before, and now we're supposed to crank it out in 6 weeks. It's appalling, actually. And a lot of it has to do with a scandal that happened. And so now we're sitting here trying to figure out how the heck we're going to send the money and not give it back. So I would like to make a motion that we write the federal government to indicate that the current structure of this funding is not workable, and that we ask for an extension for it to include the summer work.
I'll second that.
Heather, could we please get that up on the screen?
And now I got to remember that beautiful motion. Go ahead, Councillor Cole, while she's bringing that up.
Thank you, Mayor Wickstrom. What jumped out to me right away is this is an extra risk to our current public works employee. Like we're bringing, we got a crew, presumably they work in bubbles or whatever, and we are sort of jeopardizing that. So that was a concern of mine. And just another observation, we're looking at paying public works $17.51 an hour, but the museum only $15.40 an hour. And I just don't know why there would be a difference there. But I am leaning towards not taking this opportunity, but I was wondering about the discrepancy on the wage.
Historically, because I was on council at the time, I think it was, they were all even across the board, and there was a recognition of the fact that that labor position they were working extremely hard, and so the extra pay was for the type of physical labor that was required, that was not required at the museum.
I'm not sure I agree with that.
Yeah,
work, as far as I'm concerned.
that's the history of it. Go ahead, Julian. And actually, just one moment before you speak, Julian, Heather, we have the wrong screen. Go ahead, Julian.
Yep. Yeah, so don't forget that the QP 401, we've got a Councillor Cole that plays a part in the wage difference too.
Which, yeah, never mind.
The unionization of the public works outdoor employees is what I'm getting at.
Yeah. Okay, so where's the motion that we write? The federal government to indicate that the current structure of the grant is not, what was the word I used? Somebody help me.
Conducive?
Conducive to the short time frame. And that it be extended to include summer employment.
And you may want to put in there to clarify, after current structure of the, put in 2020
Yes,
Canada Summer Jobs Grant.
thank you. So, yeah, right there. The 2020, yeah, Canada Summer Jobs Grant. Thank you, Shelley.
Yeah.
At the current, actually you should put spending structure or spending timeline. That's what I said, spending timeline. because it has to be spent by February 26th, and that's just, it's not workable. Spending timeline, thank you. Okay, so a seconder for that motion, somebody did already, right? Any further discussion on that? All those in favor? Opposed, carried, okay. And so just further to that, I'm hearing that we're gonna write the letter, but not try to scramble and fill these positions for 6 weeks. Is everybody on the same page for that? Okay, I see at least 3, so go ahead, Councillor Downey, yeah.
A comment is that if staff feels that there is room for 1 or 2 to pick up somebody here, I would say let them make that decision on their own. I don't believe we have to give them our blessing on it, provided, well, we already had money set aside for students. So the money was there for our portion. So
Yeah.
I would rather just leave that in the hands of the staff to determine if or how many they may choose.
Except that I think that it was an issue, Laura, correct me if I'm wrong, that it had to include the amount the amount of students that they said for the funding, or if we could just get 1 or 2, would that be okay?
I'm not quite sure. I would have to ask him.
All right, I seem to
okay.
recall something that there was a fight to get it adjusted, so,
Okay.
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 All right, if you can clarify that, Laura, that would be great. Okay, no, I agree with you. If there's a few that can be hired and safely employed, that would be fine. We'll leave that up to staff. Go ahead.
If I could just speak- Sorry, Mayor Wickstrom, if I could just speak on that, but just for council's awareness that I have been considering under the tourism or the visitor center portion of that, perhaps getting a college student or a high school student that is fluent in website design to help out with the tourism website and possibly the town's website. And that is something that could be done from a distance, so they wouldn't necessarily have to be in the town of Port McNeill.
Yes. Okay, but the timeline is still an issue, right?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Well, we'll leave it up to staff then to figure out if they can spend what they can spend of that. Good suggestion, Shelley. Thank you. Okay. Next is the Celebrate Canada funding. So, sorry, let me just flip the page. Our Deputy Finance Officer, Laura Evans, has provided a report stating that some of the money, what it can be used to purchase red and white items. So there is a suggestion here of getting some more flags to go with those flag stands that we have that have a Canada Day on it. And one of the suggestions I had is maybe getting red and white Christmas lights that we can put up in the summer as well as in the winter. They could be multi-use. What's your thoughts, Council? Councillor Cole?
I like the Christmas light idea. I was going to bring it up at budget time, like the rest of the town's lit up and none of our facilities are, so. And I like the flag idea too. I'm not sure how much, we have 1,600. My only caution would, if we're gonna do lights, get high quality ones that don't
Yeah.
replaced every year. Like
Yeah, that was I'm with you on that one, because I know that we had some lights that lit up the harbor, and I know that they've, just like everybody else's LED lights, are burning out at a lightning speed. And I know there's a company called Decralite that has industrial grade lights. They're more expensive, but you can change one bulb at a time, which would be much better. Councillor Downey?
I'm in support of the lights.
Okay. So are we going 100% with lights or flags and lights? Somebody would like to make a motion?
A motion that we use our Canada Day funding to purchase red and white lights.
Okay, are you seconding that, Councillor Barron? Okay. Red and white lights. Yeah. Thank you. Sorry, that should be string lights, just so that we're not, just for clarity. Thanks. Okay. Any discussion on that? Seeing none, all those in favor of that motion? Opposed? Carried. Okay. So now I'd like to ask if, oh, you don't have, what's the section of in camera that we are moving into that's missing from the agenda? Sorry.
Mayor Rickstrom, we're adjourning the committee of the whole to go into a special meeting of council to ratify the recommendations from
Oh,
the
right,
committee of the
first.
whole, and then the in-camera will come after that.
Okay, thank you. All right, so motion to adjourn and go into a special meeting. Second for Councillor Barron and Cole, sure? Yeah, oh, Downey, okay. All those in favor? Sorry, just a moment here. Do I not have a special meeting agenda? Oh, right here, it's in pink. Thank you. Sorry, that threw me off. That's why I thought we were going in camera, sir.
May I
It's in
suggest?
camera. Sorry, go ahead.
May I suggest a small recess or like committing to a time for this meeting, like 5 minutes or 10 or something for the next meeting?
Sure, if you like. We're hoping to be done by 1 o'clock though.
Okay, well, it's fine. Takes a few minutes between meetings anyways, that's fine.
Well, we're not switching to, if my understanding is we're not switching out of this yet. And that's why I'm asking, Pete, did we
Got it.
have an agenda given? Because I can't find it to follow along. Unless I've now.
Mayor Wickstrom, I wouldn't mind a short break as well. Thanks.
Okay, let's take 3 minutes and then I can figure out where my agenda is for the special meeting.
I do believe that that Heather did send it out, probably all, I think there's 2 PDFs in one.
Ah, found it.
Yeah.
Sorry about that. There it is. What happens when you work off a small desk? Okay. So thank you for that recess. We'll acknowledge that we are privileged to gather on the traditional territory of the Kwakala speaking peoples, and calling the meeting to order of the special council meeting to order. Motion to adopt the agenda. Moved. Seconded. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. We have no petitions or delegations. Motion to adopt the minutes of the November 24th of the December 8th, 2020 regular council meeting. Moved, seconded. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Okay, so now we have item 4A, business bylaw number 699/2020, moving for adoption. Moved. Seconded. Any discussion on it? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. I'll just ask now for 5A, the recommendations from our meeting that we just came out of to be posted from the committee of the whole. Okay. Is there any way, is there just the one? There was a number of them, was there not? So the first one is 5B. Council, I just wanted to you want me to read them out or just to ratify those coming out of the, okay, so 5B, 5C, and 5D, motion to ratify those are, sorry, what's the word I'm looking for? Somebody help me out.
Recommendations.
Sorry?
I would move that we ratify the recommendations coming from our committee of the whole today.
Thank you, Councillor Downey. Okay, moved, seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Okay, item 6A, that council go in camera as per community charter, section 91K, negotiations and related discussions respecting proposed provision of a municipal service. And also 91J, information that is prohibited or information that if were presented in a document would be prohibited. Moved, seconded. Okay. All those in favor? Opposed, carried. So any questions from the, I believe there is media has left. Any questions from the public? Okay. So then seeing none, move to go in camera. Moved, seconded, all in favor, opposed, carried. Okay, we will go log in using our in-camera Zoom. Thank you.
Thank you.